What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved actors walks onto a live daytime talk show and suddenly the conversation takes a turn nobody in the studio was expecting? Make sure to subscribe to Final Take Files, and like and comment for more talk show coverage. So the moment starts like a pretty typical morning on the panel. The audience is clapping, the music fades out, and Whoopi leans forward with that familiar grin she gives when she's about to introduce a guest everyone already loves. All right, she says, holding up her hands as the crowd settles. Our next guest. I mean, do we even need to introduce him? Academy Award winner, producer, director, storyteller, the one and only Tom Hanks. The audience explodes into applause. Tom walks out waving, smiling the way he always does, relaxed, approachable. He gives Whoopi a quick hug, shakes hands down the panel, and sits in the guest chair. Good to see you, Whoopi says. Good to see you too, Tom replies, adjusting his jacket. I like coming here because you never know what's going to happen. The audience laughs. Joy jumps in immediately. That's the most accurate description of this show anyone has ever given. More laughter. Sunny leans forward. Tom, congratulations on the new project. Everyone's talking about it. Tom nods. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a long road getting this one made. Whoopi gestures toward him. Tell everybody what it's about. Tom begins explaining the film, speaking casually, clearly comfortable. Well, it's a story about community. About how people who disagree can still find a way to talk to each other. Which, might be useful right now. Some light applause from the audience. Whoopi chuckles. You're talking about us, aren't you? Tom grins. I didn't say that. Joy laughs loudly. No, he absolutely did. The panel chuckles and things feel relaxed. Sarah asks, did making this film change how you look at disagreements? Tom nods thoughtfully. Yeah, actually. I think we've gotten to a point where people stop listening before the other person even finishes the sentence. Whoopi tilts her head slightly. You think that's new? Tom shrugs. Maybe not new, but louder. A few people in the audience murmur in agreement. Whoopi leans back in her chair. See, I don't know if I buy that. I think people have always been loud. We just hear it more now because of social media. Tom nods politely. That's definitely part of it. But he pauses. And that pause is small. Maybe 2 seconds, but on live television, 2 seconds can feel like a minute. Joy notices it immediately. Oh no, she says dramatically. That was the pause of a man who disagrees. The audience laughs. Tom raises his hands. No, not disagreeing. Whoopi smiles slightly. But Tom shifts in his chair. But I think sometimes the loudest voices end up shutting down the conversation before it even starts. Sunny nods slowly. That's true. Whoopi raises an eyebrow. Well, wait, she says. Because sometimes the loud voices are loud for a reason. Tom looks at her. Absolutely, he says carefully. And the tone changes just a little. Not hostile, but sharper. Whoopi continues, when people feel ignored long enough, they get loud. Tom nods again. Fair point. Joy jumps in again. Okay, but there's loud, and then there's shouting everyone else down. Tom glances at Joy and nods. Exactly. Whoopi crosses her arms slightly, still smiling but now clearly engaged in the debate. But who decides who's shouting, she asks. Tom chuckles lightly. Usually the person who can't get a word in. The audience laughs again. Whoopi smiles, but this time it's the kind of smile that means she's not letting the point go. So you're saying some voices get too much space? Tom hesitates. Well, sometimes. The room quiets just a bit. Sarah senses the shift. I feel like we're getting into something deeper than the movie now. Joy laughs. That's what happens here. Whoopi turns toward Tom again. But let me ask you something, she says. Because you've been in this business a long time. You've seen every kind of debate possible. When people say certain voices get too loud, sometimes what they're really saying is they don't like what those voices are saying. Tom nods slowly. That's also true. Sunny adds, but there's also a difference between disagreeing and dismissing. Tom snaps his fingers lightly. Yes, that's the word. Whoopi leans forward now. Okay, she says. But let me challenge you on that. The audience reacts with that "oh" sound people make when they know a debate is about to happen. Tom laughs nervously. I feel like I walked into a trap. Joy claps her hands once. Too late now. Whoopi smiles but stays focused. You said earlier people stop listening, she says. But sometimes people feel like they've already been explaining themselves for years. Decades, even. Tom nods respectfully. I hear that. So when they're louder, Whoopi continues, maybe it's because nobody listened when they were quiet. The audience applauds. Tom waits for the applause to settle. Then he leans forward slightly. And maybe, he says gently, sometimes the goal shouldn't be louder, maybe the goal should be getting more people to talk. That line gets a mixed reaction. Some applause. Some quiet murmurs. Whoopi tilts her head again. But talking requires listening, she says. Tom nods. Exactly. Joy jumps in again, sensing the tension building. Okay, wait, she says, pointing between them. This feels like one of those conversations where both people actually agree, but it sounds like they're arguing. The audience laughs again. Tom smiles. Whoopi smiles too. But neither of them backs off their point. Sarah chuckles. I'm just sitting here enjoying the masterclass. Sunny adds, same. Whoopi turns slightly toward Tom again. So let me ask you directly, she says. When you say people aren't listening, who are you talking about? The audience goes quiet. Tom takes a breath. Well, honestly, Whoopi nods. Everybody. The room reacts with a mix of laughs and applause. Joy raises her hands. Diplomatic answer. But Whoopi isn't done. She leans forward again, voice calm but firm. See, I don't know if everybody is the same though. Tom looks at her. And for the first time, the tension becomes visible. Not explosive. Not dramatic. But unmistakable. Because now it feels less like promotion for a movie. And more like the start of a real debate unfolding live on television. Whoopi keeps her eyes on Tom for a moment, and you can feel the room settle into that kind of quiet that only happens on live television when everyone senses something real is about to unfold. Tom sits forward a little, hands clasped together. Whoopi says, calmly but directly, because when people say, everybody, sometimes that feels like a way to avoid saying who actually has the power in the conversation. The audience murmurs. Joy glances between them with a half-smile. Oh boy, here we go. Tom chuckles softly, but he doesn't dodge the question. That's fair, he says. Power definitely shapes the conversation. Sunny nods. Absolutely. Whoopi keeps going. Right. So when we talk about people not being heard, we have to acknowledge some folks have been talking for a very long time and were ignored. A few people in the audience clap. Tom nods respectfully. No argument there. But he pauses again. And this time Joy notices immediately. Oh no, she says, pointing at him. You did the pause again. The audience laughs. Tom raises his hands in surrender. I'm trying to choose my words carefully. Whoopi grins slightly. That usually means something interesting is coming. Tom smiles politely. Well, I think there's another side to that too. Sarah leans forward. Go on. Tom continues. I think sometimes the conversation becomes so focused on who's right and who's wrong that people stop being willing to sit at the table at all. A few murmurs ripple through the audience. Sunny responds quickly. But accountability matters too. Tom nods immediately. Of course it does. Whoopi lifts her hand slightly. Hold on. The room quiets again. So let's break this down, she says. Because I think people watching at home hear what you're saying, and they might think you're saying people should just be nicer about serious issues. Tom shakes his head gently. No, not at all. Okay, Whoopi says. Because some issues aren't polite. The audience applauds loudly. Tom nods again. True. Joy jumps in again. But we're not solving anything if everyone storms out of the room either. Sunny turns toward Joy. Sometimes leaving the room is the only way people feel heard. Tom listens closely, his expression thoughtful. Sarah says, "This is actually the conversation the movie is about, right?" Tom laughs. "Pretty much, yes." The audience laughs too. Whoopi glances at the crowd. "Well, congratulations, Tom. You turned the promo into the movie." More laughter. Tom relaxes a little. But Whoopi circles back. "So let me ask you something," she says. "Because you've always had this reputation as everybody's favorite guy." The audience cheers. Tom laughs, slightly embarrassed. "I'm not sure that's true." Joy waves him off. "It is. You're America's dad." The audience laughs again. Whoopi continues. "But when someone like you says, 'Let's all just talk,' some people hear that differently than when someone else says it." Tom tilts his head slightly. "How so?" Whoopi gestures lightly with her hand. "Well, because you've had a pretty smooth ride in this industry." The audience reacts with a few surprised murmurs. Tom blinks, slightly caught off guard but still composed. "Well, I've been very lucky," he says. Whoopi nods. "Exactly." Sunny adds carefully, "Some people don't get that same grace." Tom listens quietly. Joy jumps in again, trying to keep things light. "Okay, wait, are we grilling Tom Hanks right now?" The audience laughs. Whoopi chuckles. "Nobody's grilling him." Tom smiles. "It's okay, Joy. I've survived worse press tours." The room laughs again, easing the tension for a moment. But Whoopi continues thoughtfully. "I'm just saying, perspective matters." Tom nods slowly. "Absolutely." Then he adds something that shifts the energy again. "But sometimes assumptions about someone's perspective can also shut down the conversation." A noticeable ripple moves through the audience. Sunny raises an eyebrow slightly. Whoopi leans back a little. "Explain that." Tom takes a breath. "Well, sometimes people assume they know someone else's experience or intentions before they even hear them out." Joy points toward him. "That happens a lot online." Sunny responds, "But there are patterns too. We can't pretend history doesn't exist." Tom nods immediately. "Of course not." Whoopi folds her hands together. "But here's the thing," she says. "When people bring up those patterns, they're not making assumptions. They're talking about reality." Applause from the audience. Tom listens carefully, then responds calmly. "I agree with that. History matters." He pauses. "But I also think individuals matter too." Sarah nods slowly. "That's fair." Sunny leans forward. "But individuals operate within systems." Tom nods again. "True." Joy laughs suddenly. This is turning into a college seminar. The audience laughs loudly. Whoopi smiles but keeps the focus. "Tom, do you ever worry that when celebrities talk about unity, it sounds like they're asking people to move on before things are actually fixed?" The question lands heavier than the previous ones. A few people in the audience react with quiet, sounds. Tom thinks for a moment. "That's a really good question." He looks out at the audience briefly before continuing. "I think sometimes celebrities, including me, speak in broad ideas because we're trying to encourage hope." Sunny says softly, "Hope is important." Tom nods. "But hope without action doesn't mean much," he adds. That line gets strong applause. Whoopi nods approvingly. "Okay, now we're getting somewhere." Tom smiles. "But I also believe," he continues, "that if we treat every disagreement like a moral failure, nobody's going to risk speaking honestly anymore." The room gets quiet again. Joy whistles softly. "That's a spicy one." The audience laughs nervously. Sunny responds carefully. "Or, people might just think more carefully before speaking." Tom nods. "That could be true too." Whoopi looks at him closely now. "But do you think people are actually afraid to speak?" she asks. "Or do you think they're afraid of being challenged?" The audience murmurs. Tom considers the question. "Probably both." Joy claps once. "That's honest." Whoopi nods slowly. "Because challenging ideas is part of the conversation." Tom agrees. Absolutely. Then he adds something that shifts the mood again. But sometimes the challenge turns into dismissal. The audience reacts again with a mix of agreement and uncertainty. Sunny asks, dismissal of what? Tom answers gently, of the idea that people can grow. That line hangs in the air for a moment. Whoopi studies him. And then she says something that immediately changes the temperature of the conversation. But growth usually starts with admitting something was wrong. The audience applauds loudly. Tom nods slowly. Yes. Whoopi keeps going. And sometimes people want credit for growth without acknowledging the harm that came before. The audience reacts again. Joy leans back in her chair and mutters playfully, Tom did not expect a philosophy debate at 11 a.m. Tom laughs, but the tension is still there. Because now the conversation has moved far beyond the movie. And the audience can feel it too. Whoopi leans forward again, looking directly at Tom. So let me ask you this. When you say we should all talk more. She pauses. Who do you think hasn't been listening? The room goes quiet after Whoopi asks the question. So let me ask you this. When you say we should all talk more, who do you think hasn't been listening? Tom sits back slightly, taking a breath. You can see he's choosing his words carefully again, and the audience notices. Joy quietly mutters, half joking, here comes the pause again. The audience laughs lightly, breaking the tension just a little. Tom smiles, then answers. I think people on every side stop listening the moment they feel attacked. Sunny nods slowly but doesn't look fully convinced. Whoopi tilts her head. But feeling attacked and actually being challenged aren't the same thing. Tom nods immediately. That's true. Sarah jumps in. I think what Tom might be saying is that once people feel defensive, the conversation shuts down. Tom points toward Sarah. Yes. Exactly. Sunny responds calmly, but for a lot of people, those conversations are about real harm. So it's hard not to react emotionally. Tom leans forward slightly. Of course. And they should react emotionally. These issues matter. The audience applauds. Whoopi nods once. Okay. But she continues pressing the point. So then where does the listening happen? Tom pauses again. Probably earlier than we think, he says. Joy raises an eyebrow. Meaning? Tom explains. I think if people waited just a little longer before assuming the worst about each other, more conversations could actually happen. Sunny responds quickly. But assumptions come from patterns. People don't just imagine them. Tom nods again. That's fair. Whoopi watches him closely. But let's be honest for a second, she says. Sometimes when people talk about both sides, it feels like they're smoothing over real differences in power. A few audience members clap. Tom looks thoughtful. I understand why it can sound like that, he says. Joy leans in again, trying to balance the mood. I'm just impressed we've gotten this deep before the commercial break. The audience laughs again. Sarah smiles. This is actually a good conversation. Tom nods. I agree. Whoopi adds, it is. Because these are the conversations people are having at home. Sunny turns to Tom again. But I'm curious, she says. Do you think celebrities sometimes underestimate how serious these issues are for everyday people? Tom shakes his head gently. No. I think sometimes celebrities underestimate how much their words will be analyzed. The audience reacts with a few laughs and murmurs of agreement. Joy claps. That's the most honest thing anyone said today. Tom smiles. But that's also part of the responsibility, he adds. If you have a platform, people will hold you accountable for what you say. Whoopi nods slowly. That part one agree with. Tom looks relieved for a second. But then Whoopi adds something else. The problem is, accountability can feel uncomfortable. Tom nods. It should. That answer gets applause. Sunny smiles slightly. Okay, we're finding some common ground. Joy looks toward the camera dramatically. Mark the time. The audience laughs. Whoopi relaxes back in her chair. But I still think, she says, That some conversations get framed as debates when they're really about people asking to be treated fairly. Tom responds softly, and those voices deserve to be heard first. The audience applauds again. Whoopi nods once, acknowledging the point. For a moment the tension eases. But Joy suddenly leans forward again. "Okay, but hold on," she says. "I have to ask something." Tom laughs nervously. "That never sounds good." Joy grins. "You said earlier that people stop talking because they're afraid of being judged." Tom nods. Joy continues. "But isn't that just part of living in a society? People judge ideas." Tom thinks for a moment. "Yes," he says. "But if judgment becomes the starting point instead of the outcome, nobody risks being honest." Sunny responds. "Or maybe honesty requires accepting that people might disagree strongly." Tom nods again. "That's true too." Whoopi smiles slightly. "You're very good at walking the middle line, Tom." The audience laughs. Tom shrugs playfully. "I've had decades of practice." Joy laughs loudly. "Diplomatic Hanks." The audience laughs again. But Whoopi leans forward one more time. "And sometimes the middle line makes people wonder where you actually stand." That comment gets a louder reaction from the audience. Tom smiles politely, but this time he answers a little more firmly. "I stand on the side of people actually talking to each other." Sunny nods slowly. Sarah says, "That's probably a good place to start." Joy looks toward the producer's area. "I can hear the control room panicking right now because we've turned the interview into a town hall." The audience laughs again. Whoopi chuckles. "Well, that happens here." She glances toward the camera. "But we do have to take a quick break." Then she turns back to Tom. "And when we come back, we'll talk about the movie again." The audience laughs loudly. Joy adds, "Maybe." Tom laughs too. But as the cameras start to pull back and the music begins to rise for the commercial break, the energy at the table still feels slightly charged. Because even though everyone is smiling, it's clear the conversation isn't completely finished yet. When the show returns from commercial, the audience is still buzzing. Whoopi smiles toward the camera. "All right, we're back with Tom Hanks." The crowd applauds again. Joy quickly jumps in with a grin. "Okay, Tom, let's talk about the movie again before we start another debate." The audience laughs. Tom chuckles and answers a couple quick questions about the film and filming experience. The tone lightens, and the panel shares a few laughs. But near the end, Whoopi circles back briefly. "You know," she says, "even though we disagreed a little earlier, those conversations matter." Tom nods. "I agree." Sunny adds, "Respectful disagreement is healthy." Joy laughs. "It's basically our job." The audience applauds as the segment wraps up. Tom hugs the hosts and waves to the crowd before leaving the table. But the conversation didn't end there. Clips of the exchange quickly spread online, with viewers debating the moment across social media. Some praised Whoopi for pushing back, while others said Tom handled the tension calmly. By the end of the day, the clip was trending, proof that even a tense but respectful moment on live TV can spark a huge conversation. Now we want to hear from you. Was it a healthy debate, or did things get too awkward for daytime TV? Share your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Final Take Files for more real talk show stories.